Hello. Good morning. It's lunchtime I guess if you're on the East Coast, it's lunchtime, but otherwise, if you're in the West Coast, good morning. Thanks for joining me on this webinar. I'm happy to have you. I just want to start by saying it's live, so I'm trying out this new format. My background's not working super well. I'm sorry about that. If you have questions at any point during this live, let me know in the comments. You could put like some kind of emoji in front of your comment so I could see it, and I will be checking sporadically. If you're here, welcome. Let me know where you're from or where you're watching from. It would be cool to just know who's there. This shouldn't be too long. We're looking at maybe 30 to 45-ish minutes, depending on, how much questions you guys have. And yeah, I'm not going to take too much of your time. We're just going to get right into it. This webinar is really just kind of an introduction to the world of fractional CEOs, what that does, and what it could do for you or for your business, how and kind of like the lay of the land. We got a couple people here. Felix, welcome, Montreal. Charles Hubert from Quebec. I'm assuming that's Quebec City. And Pratek from Goa, India. That's pretty cool. Welcome. Happy to have you here. Cool. So I'll just share my screen with you guys in a minute. Cool. So I prepared some slides for this. I'm super excited. Cool. So yeah, like I said, this is really kind of fractional CEO 101, what that does and how it's useful. I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions about the job of CEOs in general. People understand what a fractional CFO does because it's typically very clear. You're like CFO, but not, most of the time. And fractional means you're part of the time, which is the same thing for CEOs. I think the need for clarity is more in terms of, what you do as a CEO, which is the short answer is a lot of things. So on the agenda today, I'm going to tell you what it's not, and before telling you what it is, because there's a lot of confusion about it. Like I said, I'm going to tell you a bit more about me and how I ended up doing that. Why a fractional CEO might be for you or not. A bit more about what my clients are, who my clients are, what I do with them, how I work, how much it costs, and then next steps. So that's pretty much the agenda for it. My goal is for you to make people feel like things are magic. Like that's my view of operations in general. It's doing hard things and making them feel easy. Typically, I like to say if people and you realize you're not doing your job when something breaks, right? Otherwise, you don't even realize that things are working, which is kind of like how I consider my job as well done. So just to start off, fractional CEOs, what it's not. It's not a consultant, and I'm not saying this to give flack to any consultants. I know there's plenty of them, and surely some of them are good. There's this misconception that a consultant is someone who's going to come in, give you a plan or make a plan for you, and then just kind of leave you to it and not help you execute it. So in that sense, I'm more like in a position where I'm going to put my hand like in the gears with you, and I'm going to push for the plan as much as it was my business, right? So I'm not going to just come and give you a plan and leave you to your own devices. The reason you're hiring me is because you don't have the skill set at the time, or the both of those things to do something. And so my job is to do that, right? I'm trying to remove pressure off of you. I'm not a quick fix. My job is to build something that's long and lasting. Usually building a business is not like there's this kind of saying that says it takes 10 years to build an overnight success. I think building businesses in general is something that's very time consuming. And I don't believe in quick fix. So if you're hoping for a turnaround of 2 weeks and you're a millionaire tomorrow, obviously I'm not the right person to help you do that. And I'm not a project manager either, right? Some people kind of see the operation person as someone you can kind of just throw whatever and someone to catch the balls. In that sense, that's kind of how I see the role of fractional CEOs is someone to implement those balls. And it's also someone who's going to be there to help you high level with the strategy. Um, just a quick reminder, if you're here and you're just joining us, Chris just joined us. Hi, Chris. If you have questions at any point, just write them in the comments and put a little, some kind of emoji in front of it. I mean, you don't have to, but it helps when there's too many things. And yeah, happy to jump on any questions you might have. So what it is actually, fractional CEO, the way I see it is like having a second brain. So I want someone, like when I had my business really early on, I did not have a co-founder. And I think it's just like naturally something that there's like a point where the further you get into your business, the harder it is to bring someone else because it's kind of your baby and there's this weird relationship with the business you have. And I never really understood how helpful that was to have a really good fit with a good co-founder, because you have someone who can share the mental burden with you. And when I had that realization, that's really like the point where I realized I didn't want to have a business if I was going to be alone in it. And I think moving forward, just that for me is like the single best thing about having a partner in a business, regardless of the complementary of the skill sets. The second brain thing, like if you're dating someone, especially that isn't an entrepreneur, sometimes they just don't get it, right? And it's kind of hard and very lonely, honestly, like to build a business. And so if you don't have someone who understands what it's like, it could be really isolating. And I think having someone you can kind of talk to, regardless of the commitment and the relationship that you guys people have, is really, really cool. The other thing is like having someone full time, but not. So that's, I mean, financially really interesting because you don't have to pay a full-time salary, but it's also interesting because you're having all the benefits of having someone all the time, but only some of the time, right? So I'm typically really available for most of my clients. I'm just going to arrange my schedules in a way that I can accommodate and plan for the needs of multiple businesses all at once. But it's not like I'm going to work for you only on Wednesday, for example, and then you have to wait to the next Wednesday for me to get back to you. So that's really kind of I think the most important thing is I'm not available all the time, but really quickly, regardless. And then I come with this huge network, right? So I'm I'm not an agency. I'm a person, but I have people that I work with. So if there is a project that we work on together that requires other skill set, I will not shy away from hiring people or getting other people to come and help us with the specifics of what needs to be done, just in the sense of you want to go faster and you want to vet things, and it also helps me scale, because I can have more value for you in the shorter term instead of being limited to things I can do myself. So that's kind of where I'm at. If there's any questions, again, don't hesitate to ask. For the people here who don't know me, thank you for coming. There's like a few people in the comments that I'm familiar with, but I don't think I've met most of you. So quickly, I come from the startup world. I've raised my first seed round in 2016 for what was at the time my third business. I basically went from cutting lawns when I was a teenager to a catering business, which led me to realize really quickly that there was not enough or no available space for us to build a business, and like the equipments are incredibly expensive. So I started off with this mission to kind of build a co-working equivalent of commercial kitchens, which is now kind of well known as far as like ghost kitchens are concerned. But at the time, that was pretty novel. And so I ended up raising a seed round of $1 million to build that. The business went bankrupt 3 years in. And after that, I worked for an entrepreneur, for an angel, for like 4.5 years as an entrepreneur in residence, where I was basically building whatever businesses he was investing in. So I was pretty much had all the fun parts of being an entrepreneur without the financial risk, which was honestly a really awesome experience. I then joined an agency for a couple of years where I had a really good experience as far as like co-founders is concerned. And for the past 2 years, I've been doing fractional work for full time. Initially, it started as a temporary thing I was going to do until I found something else, but then I realized that I really wanted to be involved in businesses for the longer term, and that was a good way for me to kind of get to work with a variety of different entrepreneurs in a variety of different industries and learn a lot as well and just bring value to businesses. And so I've been doing that full time since, and I'm really having fun doing it, so I don't plan on stopping anytime soon. In the process, I've learned a lot of things. I don't come from a financial background, but I'm pretty much self-taught, and I've developed an unhealthy obsession with Excel, which is probably usually how I start any project. Is I'm going to do financial forecasting. Just it gives me a really good way to understand how the business are built. Um, I'm an operator, so I come from the kitchen industry, from organizing parties basically, which is really a lot of getting the right people and the right things at the right place at the right time. And there's a lot of transferable skills from party to logistics and operations in terms of businesses. And I don't really have any kind of limiting industries. Like I come from the restaurant industry, but I've learned to love really working with a variety of different things. I'm doing a lot of projects in deep tech, and I've done cybersecurity. I've worked in retail and fashion. Yeah, so that's not really something that I've let shy away, that I've shied away from discovering new things. The way I work is typically I work at the intersection, I guess, of sales, operations, and finance. Those are really kind of the three things that I'm always gonna keep an eye on. I'm gonna typically end up working in a position where I work with founders. Typically, the my client is usually like the CEO of the company. Um, it might be for you if you are in a position where you do everything. So if you're the, chief everything officer, if you're in a position where you started the business, typically you have this kind of you have a lot of ideas, and you're kind of like this creative person, or you have a really narrow expertise of something. You're the product or the service. You started this business because you had the ability to deliver on those things, and you've gotten to a place where you're growing a business, right? So if you're really overwhelmed by the workload and the burden of this business, if you don't feel like you have a clear plan, and I wrote here for the next 6 months, but if you don't know what you're doing in 3 months or next year, and you're just kind of, I'm building this, um, this could be for you. If you have to-do lists that are getting longer every day instead of getting shorter, again, I mean, that's pretty much, I think, everyone's position, but some people, I think, have a better handle on it. So yeah, that's, I think there's like a variety of reasons. If you're not doing what you want to be doing, I think this is the most important one. If you, like I was saying earlier, are a person who started this business because you have an expertise, and then you get to a point where you're running a business, but what you really wanted to be doing was coding or designing this or making logos. Um, you have like a shift to do. You need to decide if you're going to become a business owner or if you're going to be this person delivering XYZ. And sometimes people get to that shift and they're not really recognizing themselves anymore. There's a couple cool comments. I just want to take a minute here. Bruno Pierre just showed up in the comments. Hi. And then Charlie Bar is like, hey, what's up? It's cool. Like, see people are knowing each other. You have too many ideas. I have Spretek here saying, you have too many ideas. Do you work with many entrepreneurs? Yes. I think for people who are familiar with the concept, like the EOS, like the traction book, I've recently became, I work with a client who had implemented that. When was this? Earlier this year, in March this year. And that's kind of where I learned about this. There's like people who are kind of the really creative people. Like if you're gonna take Apple, for example, like Steve Jobs, and then they're gonna work with a person who's like process oriented and kind of really organized, in which case that would be like, Steve Jobs and Tim Cook, or and then there's like a person who has you I don't remember the specifics of the how they're called in the book, the titles. And if you know about the book Traction, I'll link it in the comments. But basically, you need someone to implement. So, right. So the implementation part is where you need to have someone who's super structured and be like, okay, this is the big vision idea, crazy thing. How do we kind of retrofit that into actionable and digestible steps? So yes, I do that a lot. I typically work with a lot of people who have that kind of profile of they're either creators or very technical. And typically, I mean, that's like one of my later slides, but those people are often solo founders as well. Um, Reasons why it might not be for you. And these are good and bad reasons. I mean, if your team is working independently, they don't need you because you already have so many process in place. Your business is super well organized and you don't have a need to be there. You're not a bottleneck anymore. You've already done a lot of the job that I would come and do. So you probably, I mean, you might need me for other things, but that's like the biggest red flag, I would say, right? If you're the bottleneck, if you get hit by a bus tomorrow morning and your business stops existing, that's bad. And if you don't have that problem, then you're doing a great job at running your business, and you're running a business and your business is not running you. So you might not need me. You can go on vacation anywhere, anytime. I mean, I'm not coming from the financial point of view. I just meant, you could leave and things would still run. Good for you. You've done it. If you can't commit 2 hours a week for 6 weeks, that's like a deal breaker, I guess, for me, as far as I'm concerned. When I start working with a client, I have a lot of questions. So I need to understand your processes. I need to look under the hood. I need to really kind of take a deep dive and meet with your leadership team. So there's a lot of questions to answer, and I need to really better understand your vision so I can set up a plan that works. So if you don't have, or you're not willing to take that time to do that, then it's hard for me to have the stuff I need to get going. And so that could be a deal breaker for me. And I mean, for you, I think it's not worth spending the money if you're not going to get the full return you're expecting. If you can't afford to pay yourself yet, I would also probably recommend that you start by figuring out how to do that. Just because, well, financially, I I think there's like also a stress that comes with that. If you're not paying yourself because you don't need to pay yourself, that's a different story. I think if you're at a point where you're not financially stable, it's really hard to have like a cool and calm and collected head and just be in a place where you can make the right decisions, right? Um, so I like to suggest that everybody should, I mean, I believe that anybody should pay themselves, and you should start by doing that first. If you're not there yet, I'm happy to take a call and kind of just, give you a few pointers, but it's probably not worth for us to work on a bigger project at that point. And if you like everything to be on fire and you don't want things to change, well, I mean, that's a perfectly fine reason to not want, I mean, it's obviously a joke, but it's I'm saying that there because it's happened that I've had people who wanted my help but didn't know how to take the time to make the call happen. And I mean, if there's like a point where you're really that busy, I like to think that I can free up a lot of the time by removing a lot of redundant tasks, but some people are really just kind of too much in the grind, and then there's no availability for me to work either. Who my clients are typically. Typically, I work with a variety of clients, agencies, startups, SMBs. I've put all of them there. I mean, realistically, startups are the one that are a lot of fun, or I have the most fun working with anyway. I have worked with a lot of agencies, I guess just happenstance. So I understand the model quite well, and I've worked with really small, 5 people agencies, and I've worked with bigger 100 people plus agencies as well. Um, so I have a lot of experience with those, and I mean small medium businesses in general, I think, are the bread and butter. And by that I mean the distinction between startups is really just, I think, the ones that are kind of chasing money or profitable, like you're not profitable yet. And small businesses could just be you're making a lot of money, but you're selling HVAC systems and it's not sexy by the startup means. But I mean, I don't care. Um, Typically, my client, I'm looking at, $500,000 of revenue or more. I have worked with clients who are in the 100K range as well, anywhere to, 3, 4, 5 million dollars. I think this is the guideline for, where I feel there is the most value in the ones who don't, I don't want my presence to kind of become a financial strain either. And so I think there's like a sweet spot, and 500K is around there. If you're making less and you're still interested in talking, I'm super happy to do that though. Smaller teams, typically 3 to 10 employees. That helps because if you're a solo, I mean, if you're a one person team, which happens, and I've had clients who do it as well. But usually there's less time, and it's easier for you to delegate stuff to your employees and have time to kind of work on the business when you're already at the point where you have a few employees. So the delivery of the service or products can still kind of get going, and you're not the limiting factor. And then solo founders, typically, I've worked with a couple of bigger teams, but usually the founders who have the expertise, the ones who are, you're the creative, you're a person, your company's, like architecture firm, or you're doing logos or websites, or you're a habit tech startup and you're the one who kind of started, you're the lead developer, stuff like that. Again, typical clients, it's not all of my clients. I've worked with anything and everything. I've had projects where I was kind of more of like almost a chief of staff, where I was second in command. And I've had projects where I kind of just came in and did some kind of process implementation for a small scope of a small project, right? So that varies a lot. One of the projects I worked on in the past couple months was Scale Quest. If you're on LinkedIn, you've probably seen Tommy. He's pretty active there. That is actually how we met, through LinkedIn comments somewhere. And we've been we had been talking for numerous months before we started working together. Initially, he reached out to me because he was in this position where he had a couple of employees working for him. ScaleQuest is a company. They specialize in cold calling services, but they do it in a. They sell themselves as we're human and friendly, and we're not going to pressure sell, basically. Which I was really interested in this approach that was a bit different. And he approached me because he was at a point where he's a sales expert coming from a sales background, and he didn't know the first thing about building a business when he started, and he's been learning on, you know, as he's going. So he had a lot of issues as far as like his time management, and just he felt like he was really inefficient, and he wanted to help to structure processes for his business and for his employees to kind of just set himself up to scale. So the way I went about it was to really kind of do a deep dive of everything, which started by me doing a lot of phone calls, right? So he has a company doing cold calls. So I did cold calls for some hours on different projects that he had at the time, just to really better understand the reality of how things are, why they are that way, and where are the friction points, what's working well, and just really understand how it's been built. From there, we kind of sat down and revised everything. So we had weekly sessions where we would work on some blocks of stuff at the time. So we did a complete reassessment of his price points and his packages and what they included and how to deliver, or how the deliverables were they realistic and scalable. We went from, he was running everything in Excel, so we set up a CRM for him so he could run his projects a lot better and have more accountability and more data. He was doing daily recaps to his clients, which was taking him an insane amount of time. So by setting up a CRM, he could have reports and just export them in a click instead of spending 15, 20 minutes on each project. And then we mapped out the internal process for sales and all the customer journey to really better understand everything that happens and how do we automate a lot of the follow-ups and just kind of setting himself a framework to be able to him be a lot more efficient and then just breaking down all the things he wanted to do. That was a process that we did over a couple months of working together, and it really kind of helped him scale. Now he's like really on fire. He's so busy right now that it's like, I mean, in a good way. He's really focused. He's hiring and he has more projects coming in that he can manage. So he's hiring nonstop. And it's really, I think, one of those kind of use case where I was like, I mean, we're not finished. I think there's still room for improvement. But it was really fun to work with him because he was really responsive and he really kind of wanted things to move. And so, yeah, I had a lot of fun working that. And I think ultimately I really kind of got him structured in a way that he can go faster now. The way I work is typically in 3 phases, depending on the scale of the project. I'm always going to do these 3 things. The first step is really for me to look everything and kind of better understand the business and the state of where it's at and the tools and what's set up, and then align with the vision that the CEO or my client, whoever that is, has for the business, where you want to go. And that could be 6 months to a year to 5, 10 years. I mean, most people don't really see that far, but when they do, we can kind of take that goal and then see what we have in place and what's the gap, right? So that usually means looking at the financials. If there's any sales process, if there's a CRM, I'm going to look at that as well. Different kind of sources of income, and operationally, are we set up in a way that we could deliver what we said we would sell, assuming we had unlimited sales coming in? What's going to break first, and kind of just start there. A lot of the times they get to me with a list of things I don't like doing. That's often something I'm going to ask my clients is like, make a list of all the things you're doing, all the things you are doing you don't want to be doing, things you're good at, and just really realign everyone's role and responsibilities where they need to be or where they would want to be, I guess. So once we have that, we set up a strategy, we make a game plan, we align on it, and then we kind of take the plan and we make it, right? So we have weekly check-ins. I have weekly check-ins with most of my clients. Sometimes we're going to have work sessions as well, depending on what the goals are, what we're trying to do, and how fast we're trying to go. And then yeah, we push, and I'm going to push for every business I work with, no matter, like, and that's like a thing for me. It's really just important for my clients to understand. It's not because I'm not a shareholder or an employee on the payroll full time that I'm not going to push for your business. Like, and you basically benefit me. And if I meet someone I happen to have coffee with and they're looking for something that could benefit you, I'm for sure going to tell you. And that's kind of the vision I have for how I build this. So as far as working together right now, my projects are usually in 2 different type of scopes. It's either like a small project where we're going to say there's a narrow focus, so we want to fix this specific problem. So that's usually sometimes a way I'm going to start with clients when we're not certain about the big picture or the long-term plan. So that way, it's a way to test a relationship also, but also for you to get value short term. So for those things, we're going to say it's like a 2 to 3 month scale for one deliverable, and that would be like a fixed price for whatever deliverable is. And the other option is to do some kind of ongoing retainer, where that's like a 1 day a week situation, or we define a set of targets or areas to work on, and then I do however much I could do in this time frame. And that means I'm also going to get some people involved. So if there's like a point where we need to do cold calls, well, I can have someone to do the cold calls with us to kind of set the stage and test some theories. My goal is to find the right people and then put them in place, right? So I'm often going to start by doing the things myself, like I was saying for the ScaleQuest project, to better understand how they work. And then once we've set up the processes, then we're either going to create a SOP or process for a task, and then find a person to do that thing. And if that's a person you already have in the team, then we train that person. If it's a person who we need to hire, then we do that. But sometimes I can kind of take on some of those things within my my mandate to kind of test it out before we roll it out. And yeah, I think if you have questions, and I put a price range here. I put between 2 and 4,000 a month, and all of those things are like, to be discussed based on the scope of the project. Like if we're gonna do something around a smaller project, it could be less money, or if you want to do 2 years, which I mean can be discussed. I have a question here from Ramon. Question for you, Emily. What key metrics or deliverables should a fractional CEO prioritize to demonstrate their ability to quickly and efficiently add value to their clients? Um, I think that depends a lot on what the goal is. Because if your goal is to do a ton of money short term, then the metrics could be number of sales or number of phone calls or number of something like that, right? Um, I usually kind of go more as far as time saved. And it's hard because the first part of my work requires me to understand things, which means it's like a net negative, because I'm going to require some time for my clients for them to explain things to me, um, in order to get set up, right? So it's like, send me documents and answer these questions I have. But once that's done and I really have a better understanding, it's a lot easier for me to kind of come to you and give you the lay of land. And I'm offering, usually I'm going to come up with some metrics that I'm going to think are more relevant depending on what the project is. But it really depends. So it could be a range of things. Protec has a cool here saying, my view is that KPIs are easy to establish for sales roles, yes, but tough for operation. Top is about getting shit done, not metrics. Yeah, that's kind of true. And I mean, it's a problem because operation is kind of like this kind of vague garbage bucket of everything we don't know where to put, right? So if you're doing a sales role, it's very clear that you're in a sales position and your metrics are number of call book or this and this and that. Um, in my case, I might do some HR, I might do some marketing and branding strategy or pricing, and then do some reporting or cash flow analysis. So a lot of those things are not necessarily clear outcome, but it's also really important. Like I'm often the transition between the two, right? So the CEO has a bunch of ideas, and then I'm the one taking those ideas and harnessing those ideas and structuring them. So I often end up being in like a number two position where yeah, KPIs are a bit unclear, but I think overall is really kind of saying you're going to do a thing and then doing that thing, and showing value typically is lowering the workload and the mental burden for someone else. That's kind of how I see it. Questions. I had a slide just for that. We're nearing the end. There's quite a lot of you here. I'm really happy, and I mean, thanks for coming so far. For the ones who are still there. I don't have much left. I have like another slide for you guys. If there's more questions, um, is there anything that I've covered or I have not covered that isn't clear, or something you want to discuss? Why made you want to come to this webinar today? Question for Felix. How is your authority established within the business? That's a good question. So typically I come in as like an outside. So because I'm like this outside person looking in, there's like, advantages, and also I think that's like a negative because it's sometimes people are a bit, I'm not wary, but they don't know you, right? So there's clearly some kind of friction or resistance sometimes. Um, I've been in both positions. Like I've had experiences where it was like super welcoming, and some positions where they're like, "Oh, why is she here?" I think usually the nature of because I'm kind of put there by the CEO typically. So the CEOs usually do a great job of like selling me as like this person is going to come and help us for this, right? And there's a lot of times, like just yesterday, I was meeting with a new client, and like I showed up there, and the head of sales was like, "Oh, we heard so much, and we're like really excited to work with you," because they're all overwhelmed, right? Like they all have so many things, and I'm sold as this person who's gonna come and take things off their plate. So a lot of the times, people are kind of welcoming, and they just want me to come take stuff off for them or fix things. Because there's also this thing which is kind of nice is I'm an outsider, right? So I can have sometimes answers from staff or employees that things here that people are not going to communicate to the CEO. And that could be like a variety of reasons, right? But people are not necessarily open or comfortable sharing everything or the frustrations that they have, or they're like, well, I've said this like 60 times, but no one ever did anything about it, right? So if I show up, the first thing I do is usually do interviews with the higher, like the leadership thing, or like the head of departments and stuff like that. And those meetings are usually uh, solid gold because I meet with people and they're like, well, this is what we're doing wrong. This is what I would do different. And so I have a lot of really good feedback from people that way. And then as far as my authority, well, I don't see myself as coming in being their boss as much as I'm there to help. And um, I want people to want to work with me, because if there's some kind of friction or resistance, then it's hard for me to also do my job, which is usually what I get hired for, is to help, right? So if you're not willing to be helped, it's hard. Um, but I've never had any kind of issues, as much as sometimes it's just the employees are a bit scared from the leadership, which happens sometimes, sadly. I hope that answers your question. Mathieu said he had to go. Thanks for coming, Mathieu. I wasn't sure you would have time. That's cool that you were able to. Um, Question from Ramon. How can we break into the world of fractional CEOs? How do we build credibility if we don't have yet specific experience in the field? I assume we can leverage some of their previous experience, but could you provide, yes, additional insights? So I think a lot of the time you can use your corporate experience to kind of carry over into the fractional world. In my case, I started doing like contract-based projects over 8 years ago. It just took me a really long time to kind of do it full time and sell myself doing that. So I had a lot of experience already when I started. I think what was hard is kind of figuring out how to explain what you're doing and the expertise. Like I meet with other fractional CEOs, I would say quite regularly, because I'm just kind of curious. And I think for networking purposes also, which is interesting because most people I meet have vastly, wildly different backgrounds as I do. So I've met fractional CEOs who have never been entrepreneurs. I've met fractional CEOs who were like super analytic and really kind of SEO based and clearly very skill set at different things, but had no leadership experience whatsoever, right? So I think it's like a matter of finding the kind of fit that you have and the problems that you're trying to solve as well, right? I come more in a position of I've been, running and building businesses, and that's really what I'm targeted at doing. If you're going to go into that and you're looking at working, I would say trying to find, like, I find a lot of gigs by actually looking at job offers on LinkedIn, ironically, because a lot of the times people have a posting for like chief of staff. I think there's a lot of overlap, chief of staff roles with fractional jobs. So there's like opportunities for you to kind of offer someone and be like, hey, you're recruiting right now, but I could get into the job for like 15 hours a week or something until you find someone. And that could be a good opportunity if you're going to kind of start and do smaller projects. And then otherwise is like network. Most of my gigs, and that kind of, I mean, it sucks if you don't have a network, but most of my gigs are coming through my network. and just people I've known or networking. So it's really really, really underrated. Like, it's not underrated, but it's like networking is there's like this really thing that I hate this saying, but it's like your network is your net worth. And that's like sad because it's really true. So I think for you to do it is like you have to start doing it and just kind of do projects and volunteer information. Like you volunteer with companies and you're like, hey, I could do this thing for you, and kind of bundle it in a way that it's easy and digestible. I hope that helps. And if you have more questions, I'm happy to talk after send me a message. One thing I wanted to learn from fractional CEOs is what tasks do we decide to delete completely rather than automate, delegate, streamline? How do we decide what works and what does not move the needle? Um, Having a clear set of vision and being aligned with the goals you have, right? Um, I think a lot of the time it's really a matter of FOMO and just thinking you have to do everything, and being incredibly aligned with this is my goal. Is this a side quest? Or, like raising money, for example. Like I'm gonna give that example because that's like a lot of the time people end up being stuck in a vanity raise where you're raising because you think you need to do it because everyone else is doing it. Um, Fundraising is something you need to do full time if you're going to do it well. So when you're fundraising, you need to drop everything else. And if you're the CEO of the company and you're dropping everything else, a lot of the times nothing else happens, right? So you need to set up yourself in a way that things are running without you being there. So how are you going to decide what you're going to automate, delegate? Like you need to have processes and kind of be very clear on this is where we're going. And I think the first thing is tracking. Like Clockify offers it's free. I really love that for that. You could create projects and then just like clock in, clock out. Or what I do is they have like a plugin with Google Calendar. So I book everything in my calendar. So I have bookings, but then I adjust them for reality. And then at the end of the week, I could just put all my time for different projects in different blocks. So I could see exactly where my time went for everything. And I'm like anal in the way that I put my showers and if I'm going to take a break for lunch or go for a run. So I also have that kind of level of transparency. And I think a lot of people I meet or work with don't do that because it's like a time suck. But having the data shows you where you're wasting your time. And that's like the first step, right? I think deciding what to stop doing is you need to know what you're doing before you get there. Um, so yeah, I hope that answers the question. And then other questions. Thank you. Charles Hubert says thank you for the presentation. If you had to leave, thanks for coming. Yeah, next, I quickly before I let you guys go. So I'm testing out a new format for the end of the year. So if you're interested in trying it out, you're not sure, or you kind of want to get yourself going. So I kind of pitch this as a Q1 audit where we're going to start around the Christmas time and then finish in March, where I'm basically doing a mini audit. I forgot to specify this is 2,500 Canadian dollars, not US. So if you're in US, this is even cheaper for you. So what I would do is like a kind of skeleton forecast, right? Like a very simple strategy and forecast with like a clear set of goals. I'm going to do a dive on your financials and like everything that you have or don't have. And then 8 sessions, and those are like one-on-one sessions over the span of, January to March, where I kind of help you set up to put stuff in place and just kind of make sure you move the needle. An expression that Pratek used that I actually love using. I think that's the best way to see it is, are you moving the needle? Is this getting you closer to your goal? So this is like a limited time offer because I don't have unlimited bandwidth to do those. I want to try out that format. So if someone is kind of on the fence and you want to figure out if because that's the other thing we didn't really address, but working with fractional CEO, it's also a lot about the relationship. So like, if we don't like each other, then it's probably not going to work, and that's okay. Like, people, I think you need to trust, you need to have confidence in each other, and you need to have like some kind of level of, I see myself working together full time, or whichever format. You need to like each other. So if you want to try it out, you don't have a clear plan, or you have like a general idea, but you're not really sure what the right next step is, and you want to have a second opinion, that could be a good way to do that. And question here that we just got here from Bernadette. Thanks, Amelie. I just wanted to get a better sense of what you're doing and how you're doing it. I'm very much interested in fractional work, currently working for a fractional CFO firm. I wish you the best for 2025. Hold our pat meet. Cool. Well, thanks. I'm happy you came, and I'm really glad that, I'm happy to check in later this year if this is something you want to talk about for the new year. Thank you guys. I think this was my last slide. And yeah, this is a photo of me and a QR code that leads you to my Calendly, I believe. So if you want to just, and this is not like a, hey, buy my things, as much as if you want to just talk more than in a comment format on a webinar, and you want to have an actual conversation, or coffee date, that also works if you happen to be in Montreal. Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I have a couple of times available for the rest of a few spots in the next couple of weeks, but I'm gonna not be working as of December 19th onward. So do what you will with that information. If you're available and want to talk, feel free to do it. And otherwise, I'm happy for you guys to come. You've Thank you for coming. I appreciate your presence and the engagement and the questions. That was super helpful. And yeah, we have a couple of people. Philip, I just saw you here. Hi. Thank you. Chris as well. Bruno Pierre. Looking forward to our lunch next week. So yeah, thank you so much, guys. I'm really happy. I'm gonna let you guys go back to lunch, and wish you the best for the rest of the day. Happy Tuesday. Thank you.